you for being with us tonight, September 25th, for the Berkeley City Council District 2 Candidate Forum. My name is Elisa Mills of the League of Women Voters of Berkeley, Albany, and Emeryville. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We do not support or oppose candidates or parties. The advocacy arm of the League may take positions on issues such as ballot measures. However, this forum is presented by the Voter Services and Education arm of the League, which does not take positions nor advocate for them. I'd like to remind everyone that the candidates have all agreed to participate under ground rules set for this forum. These ground rules are posted in Eventbrite. Candidates are not permitted to display campaign buttons, t-shirts, signs, Zoom backgrounds, etc. in order to maintain neutrality. We are recording tonight's forum, and the session will be available on our website, lwvbae.org, through votersedge.org/ca, with links on our social media accounts at lwvbae. There are 4 candidates running for Berkeley City Council District 2. They are Cheryl, Davila, Terry Taplin, Alex Sharenko, and Timothy W. Carter. On your ballot, you will be able to choose one candidate out of the 4. Now let's go over a few ground rules. Each candidate has 2 minutes for opening remarks. The order has been determined by drawing lots. The timekeeper will signal candidates with the green colored window, which will count down the seconds from 2 minutes to 15 seconds to go, when it will turn yellow, and then red when the full 2 minutes is up. As people signed up via Eventbrite, they submitted written questions. If you have additional questions, you may type them in by clicking the Q&A icon. Our volunteers will take the questions and pass them to the moderator. All questions will be screened to avoid duplication and personal attacks. The order of answering the questions will be alternated, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Again, the timekeeper will signal candidates. There will be no separate rebuttals. However, the candidates may choose to use some or all of their 1 minute to rebut the response given by another candidate. Following the questions, each candidate shall have 1 minute for a closing argument. Now let's begin with our District 2 candidate forum, and each candidate will give an opening statement of 2 minutes, and we shall start with Timothy Carter.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me? Great. All right, well, thank you for your invitation today and allowing me to speak to your members. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a resident of District 2 since 1997. I've been a Berkeley-based small business owner in District 2 since '99, well over 20 years. I've got 3 beautiful children, all of whom attend or have attended Berkeley Unified School District, which is where I've dedicated most of my time. I'm currently the Personnel Commissioner for the Berkeley Unified School District, where I've been Commissioner since 2012. I give you this background just to let you know a little bit about me, that I live in the community, I work in the community, I'm vested in the community, and I'm concerned with the direction of our community. I found as Personnel Commission Chair that it's essential to have the ability to bring opposing viewpoints to the table and facilitate meaningful conversation in order to reach our goals and find solutions. I've been able to do this as Personnel Commissioner, which is why I've been endorsed by the BCCE, which is the Berkeley Council of Classified Employees, and I will bring the same goal-driven, decision-making leadership to the City Council. Under my leadership as a Personnel Commissioner, we successfully completed the first class and comp study done in 13 years. This study helped bring the Berkeley Unified Classified Employees' jobs, responsibilities, and pays in line with districts throughout the region. I've served on the Berkeley School Excellence Program Committee, also known as BCEP, as part of the oversight for Measure E1 that Berkeley voters passed in 2016. I've also served as a parent advisory committee in 2015 for the LCAP, also known as the Local Control Accountability Plan, which helped reshape school funding and aim to improve achievements for all schools throughout the district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now Terry Taplin.
Hello, my name is Terry Taplin. I am the Vice Chair of the Berkeley Transportation Commission and a community organizer born and raised in Southwest Berkeley, and also an alumnus of the Berkeley Public Schools. I'm running for the Berkeley City Council because the city's most diverse district is too often overlooked. We have some of the most dangerous streets for cyclists and pedestrians. The cost of housing has displaced entire communities. Our roads and stormwater infrastructure are deteriorating. Our parks are vulnerable to contamination, and gun and traffic violence disproportionately impact our communities. Now, with COVID-19, Berkeley's households are facing unprecedented rates of unemployment and lack of childcare. We need a new generation of progressive leadership to face these next level challenges. As a youth commissioner, I fought to secure funding for educational and recreational programs serving low-income youth. As a civic arts commissioner, I obtained an increase to arts grants funding and advanced an arts and culture plan update that centered women, people of color, and LGBTQ artists and cultural workers. As vice chair of the Transportation Commission, I've advanced initiatives to address pedestrian and bicycle safety and enable Berkeley to reduce greenhouse gas emissions originating from its transportation sector. I'm honored to have the support of the California Democratic Party, California Young Democrats, Equality California, the Victory Fund, State Senator Nancy Skinner, Assemblymember Buffy Wicks, Assemblymember Rob Bonta, the Berkeley Firefighters, Mayor Jesse Arreguín, Vice Mayor Sophie Hahn, Berkeley City Council members Rydell Robinson, Lori Drossi, Rashi Kesarwani, and Susan Wingraff, Berkeley School Board President Judy Appel, Vice President Ty Alper, School Board Directors Khadijah Brown, Beatrice Leva Cutler, and Julie Sinai, Latinos Union State Berkeley, the East Bay Stonewall Democratic Club, the Berkeley Democratic Club, East Bay Young Democrats, Cal Berkeley Democrats, and leaders both in the community and throughout the East Bay. A list of my endorsements can be found at terrytaplin.com. I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you very much. And now we'll hear from Alex Sharenko.
Thank you to the League for hosting tonight, and thank you for everything you do for our democracy. It's important now more than ever, perhaps. So my name is Alex Sharenko, and I'm a solar energy scientist that's dedicated my entire professional career to making new solar energy technologies to build a truly environmentally sustainable society. And up to about 4 years ago, I thought that would be the cause of my life. But in 2016, after a person that represents the worst of our country was elected president, I decided that wasn't enough. And so I made the decision to dedicate whatever time and energy I could to serving the community right here in Berkeley. So I volunteered at the Berkeley Youth Alternatives and their after-school program as a tutor and mentor to lift up the underserved youth of our community. I volunteered with the Friends of Strawberry Creek Park to help keep Strawberry Park clean and a safe resource for our community's children and families. I showed up to city council meetings to advocate for social, racial, and environmental justice. And eventually I was appointed to several city commissions where I've served and had the opportunity to write a plan for the city and the school district to work together to build teacher housing and to work with nonprofits to address the racial wage gap in Berkeley. From all this work, I've learned two things. Berkeley is full of amazing, inspiring people trying to make the world around them a better place, but also that our city's leadership is failing us, especially those of us in District 2. We have the worst roads of any council district. Aquatic Park has been neglected to the point of becoming a public health hazard from E. coli. Our community has no shortage of violent crime and racial inequities as a result of our current public safety institutions, and we bear a disproportionate burden of the moral failure that is homelessness, a failure that has gotten worse every single year the last 4 years. So I'm running for city council because I think our community deserves better. I'm running to bring up responsive, inclusive, accountable leadership to our community and to address these problems. I'm running because I'm committed to the progressive values that are so important to all of us, but also to making real progress on these issues, because that's what this community deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Cheryl Davila.
Thank you. I'm Cheryl Davila, council member for the District 2 currently. And I am a 39-year resident of Berkeley in District 2, a longtime renter, married for 33 years, and the mother of 2 adult children who went through Berkeley Unified School District. I am principled, and accountable representative for the people of Berkeley and the voice of the residents of District 2. I have worked every day to be available and transparent to my neighbors and to my constituents, to fight for human rights, to build an economic and social equity within our district, city, and the region at large. I support resiliency hubs for emergency preparedness, beautification without gentrification or displacement, and efficient budgets that reflect progressive values. I am committed to a just and equitable COVID-19 recovery in District 2, and as chair of a regional climate emergency mobilization task force and RV and tiny home solutions to homelessness task force, I will fight for an affordable, regenerative, and resilient future. Let us stand together to achieve equity, security, justice by finding innovative ways to protect our lives in our community. I've been endorsed by 350 Bay Area, the Alameda Labor Council, Bay Rising Action, Berkeley Citizens Action, Berkeley Progressive Alliance, the Berkeley Tenants Union, East Bay Working Families, John George Democratic Club, Our Revolution, SEIU 1021, and Sunflower Alliance. We back Wellstone Democratic Club and Wired. I've also been endorsed by Ben Bartlett, Councilmember for District 3 in Berkeley, and Kate Harrison, District 4, former Mayor Gus Newport, and Carol Kennerly, former Vice Mayor Keith Carson, and many, many more. Go to www.cheryldavila.vote.
Thank you. Okay, we will start with the first question to Terry Taplin to start. How will you support the city's youth commission? How will you ensure that voices of youth are heard?
Thank you for this question. Actually, my time on the Youth Commission was my first entry into public service. I think that partnering with the high school students and also young UC Berkeley students and giving students and young people priority in commission appointments, especially youth from District 2, fighting to ensure that all young people have lifelong skills building and gainful employment, and keeping open door to the ideas of young people. I recently had the pleasure of speaking to some young leaders at the Ecology Center, and I always like to ask young people what they're thinking about and what they want to see from the city, so that I can empower them to do what I'm doing. When I was a young person, I never dreamed of running for council, and part of why I'm running is to show young people who look like me, who grew up like me, that they do have a voice in the city or represent where they come from.
Thank you. Okay, next, Alex Sharenko.
Yes, thank you. One of the reasons I was motivated to run is to have young people and millennials and the next generation get involved in the issues that will affect our generation disproportionately, whether it's climate change, whether it's housing affordability. These issues are going to be left to us to solve and going to be part of a central part of our life. And so I recognize that involving the next generation and bringing young people into the political process is incredibly important. My appointments to city commissions will reflect that. My engagement with the community will reflect that. I'm supportive of allowing 16-year-olds to vote in school board elections as the city is moving towards, because I think it's incredibly important that young people have a voice, a real voice in the politics of their future.
And Cheryl.
Thank you for the question. I support youth in so many ways. I've been having interns from the high school in my office. Currently, I have 2 interns in my office that are a junior in high school and a senior in high school. And I've had interns in my office since I've been in office. They also help me write legislation, because they have excellent ideas. We just put in an item that got passed to provide menstrual products for the unhoused. And that was all their idea. I also support youth by having to deal, I started with some faith leaders and community leaders, Voices Against Violence, which is a youth violence prevention program. And that's been ongoing for over a year. I've also been trying to get a youth listening campaign so that we can hear what youth want, what they need, and how we can help them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now, Timothy Carter.
All right, thank you for the question. So how would I support the Youth Commission? I love this question. My oldest daughter was a member of the Youth Commission, and we actually had a brief conversation about how I would engage them if and when I became council member. One of the things I recall when she was on the Youth Commission is that the youth need engagement. They need to be engaged, and that's the first thing I do. So I'd make sure that they're part of my campaign, part of my office. I'd make sure that they are participating in the process, so they'll understand the political process, the city council process, how budgets are formed, how decisions are made. I think the key issue with youth is making sure you meet them where they are and you engage them in what's interesting to them. And then they're our future. So I think that's the only way to go.
Okay, thank you very much. For the next question, we'll start with Alex. What specific measures will you take to increase housing and address homelessness in the district? What should you do differently than City Council is doing now, and should regional cooperation increase?
So we absolutely need more regional cooperation. It's a regional issue. Berkeley's never going to be able to solve our homelessness or housing problems on our own. That being said, we can't abdicate our responsibility to act on these issues. And so with respect to homelessness, I think we need more of a focus and more of our resources spent on permanent supportive housing, not on short-term remedies, but on building real pathways to get people off the streets into permanent supportive housing. I'm worried that we're normalizing the moral failure that is people living on our streets. That's not acceptable. We should not be okay with encampments. We should be moving people towards permanent supportive housing. With respect to housing, we have to build more housing. The state has laws that we're going to have to build more housing. I'm in favor of missing middle type small 3-4 unit apartment buildings. I think that has to be a part of the solution. But really we have to build more housing, and we have to get permanent supportive housing for our currently unhoused.
Thank you. And Timothy.
Thank you. So I think the biggest part of your question was, what would I do differently? So I'm a big advocate of housing, and especially along our San Pablo corridor where it just makes sense. So what I do differently is I'd encourage the city to actually get involved in manufacturing, creating housing. So one thing I didn't have a chance to tell you about is I have developed infield housing in District 2 from beginning to end, acquisition of financing, development of property. I'm familiar with it, and I know there's a way the city can get in, do it more efficiently than our nonprofits, and do it more cost effectively than our developers that we hope when they're done will offer some below market rate units. So what would I do differently? I'd get the city involved from the beginning to make sure everyone is taken care of and everyone is housed, from the missing middle to the homeless. And that's the only way we can do it, if the city gets involved.
Thank you. And Terry.
We have to work as a region with our neighboring cities and the county. There are places that have a lot more space where we can locate RVs and encampments for safe overnight parking and access to basic utilities like sanitation, waste removal, and hygiene. District 2 shouldn't be the only district expected to respond to homelessness. Every district should be stepping up to support collective call-on. I support support permanent support housing with background services folks with severe mental health and substance needs. I also support rehousing programs, and these kinds of programs are priorities. To increase affordable housing, we do also increase our tenant protection infrastructure, in addition to doing things like removing apartment minimums to construction to open more space for more units, and utilizing duplexes in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cheryl.
Thank you for the question. For one, we have to repeal Costa-Hawkins to make, that would be a first step. And then we have to create communities where we can put tiny homes and safe parking until we can find housing for all our unhoused folks. One thing that we can do differently is fund the organizations that are out there working with the homeless, and have the relationships that and the trust from them in order to lift them up and deal with them holistically, not just one issue, but every issue that's going to help them change their lives permanently. So we need to work with these organizations, and we also need to create housing. I put in an item to remediate a couple spots in Berkeley, the Courtyard lot next to it, and then the Santa Fe right-of-way, and that's just two of the things that would assist in right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Terry, your audio has been breaking up, and I don't know if there's anything that you could do to improve that, but I wanted to let you know that. So anyway, okay, so for the next question, Cheryl, we're going to start with you. What is your plan to address gun violence in District 2?
Thank you for the question. Lately, there's been quite a bit uptick in the shootings, and I have a call in to a couple of the pastors, and I have a meeting on Monday to actually address this issue, because Voices Against Violence, which is a youth violence prevention program, has been active for over a year. The pastors and the community members involved in that program know who some of the families and they have an in that maybe a lot of people don't know about, and they were able to talk to, they know the families, and they know the people, and they know how to resolve these issues. So we've been meeting, and we have another meeting on Monday, and Voices Against Violence has been working pretty well since it's been started just about a year ago. They got our UC Berkeley Chancellor's Grant, and they also need more money and funding to continue the program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next, Terry Taplin.
Well, there can be zero tolerance for violence of any kind in our communities. And responding to violent crime is exactly what our PD is doing. But we can't talk about increasing police without acknowledging the fact that post the black and Latinx lives. I appreciate reference. I think that is the community response that we should be prioritizing. I also think that's really important for neighbors who are all experiencing violence to be kept in communication, because we're dealing with not only intergenerational trauma, we're also dealing with trauma, and there has to be more communication among the neighborhoods to address that. But yeah, like growing up here is something that we've seen cycles. These are a lot of young folks who are from the same place I'm from.
Okay, Thank you, Terry. I have to say, we continue to have a good bit of your audio garbled, so I hate to suggest it, but if you think it would be better, at least for us to get the audio, then maybe we should have you not have your video going while we do the questions. So think about that. So it would be your decision, really. So okay, sorry about that. And then so
Okay, thank you. So how do you address gun violence? That's a difficult question. So the first thing I do is you need the community involvement. So you need to include the community in whatever decisions you make. I would advocate for more of a community watch where the community is involved in its own safety. Because let's face it, the police cannot stop this. They can deter it, but they can't stop it. The only way to stop and address gun violence is to address the root cause of gun violence. And you can't do that without community help. So yes, the first thing I do was reach out to the affected neighborhoods and bring them in and have a conversation with them. And then if there's another community group who can offer support, then they need to be involved as well. But ultimately, it's the community that needs to be supported when addressing this.
okay, thank you very much. And Alex.
Yes, so I think, we need leadership that can really establish the civic infrastructure between neighbors, between community leaders and groups, and yes, between the police to help identify those at risk at gun violence, those dealing with mental illness, those suffering from poverty, those dealing with familial or personal conflict. And we need to be proactive and help intervene and get those people the help they need before gun violence happens. But then when gun violence does happen, we need leadership to step in and lead conversations with those same groups, neighbors, community leaders, community organizations, and yes, the police, about why this happened, how we can do better next time, and to deal with the trauma, the very real trauma from living in an environment with gun violence. Not 2 weeks ago, there was multiple casings 100 feet from where me and my family sleep, and that's unacceptable, and it's been unacceptable that we haven't had a serious response to this until this forum, really.
Okay, thank you. Okay, for the next question, we shall start with Timothy first. And what is your position on new development and how will you manage thoroughfares to deter traffic?
So my position on new development needs to be, I am for new housing as long as it's planned properly. The West Berkeley plan hasn't been updated in well over 20 years. We need a plan for these houses and the high density houses that we need, but we don't need a haphazard structure of development where it's one off here, maybe this will be approved, maybe that'll be approved. We need a plan, and the city needs to tell the developers what we want here. So in order to do that, we need to update our West Berkeley plan to give everyone an idea of what we're looking for. And when we do that, we need to include and have the businesses on the San Pablo corridor here. They should have a voice because parking is their lifeblood. So we would have to make sure the buildings that we approve include enough parking that will support the businesses along this corridor.
Okay, thank you very much. And Cheryl.
Can you please repeat the question? You're muted.
Yes, sorry. What is your position on new development and how will you manage thoroughfares to deter traffic?
Thank you for the question. So new development, you're right, we do need a San Pablo corridor plan. We need to have all the businesses involved in the decision-making process, because they are actually, quite a few businesses have contacted me about the parking situation. So yeah, new development is being built on a transit corridor, but that doesn't mean people are going to give up their cars. And so we need to have a real robust conversation and implementation. I've been asking since I've been in office to have a feasibility study for the San Pablo corridor and West Berkeley, because there hasn't been one in quite some time. And so hopefully that will happen within the next term. But, you know, new development, there's going to be, you know, they have to keep in mind that there are other people that will be impacted by that development. And so their needs also need to be met, and everybody needs to come to the table to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Alex.
Yeah, so we're in a housing crisis, and fundamentally it's because we don't have enough homes. And so we need to be building more homes. We need to be very thoughtful about how we do it. And the state is passing laws to make cities like Berkeley build more housing. Right now in Berkeley, you can only really build single family homes, which are expensive, and very large, tall apartment buildings, which are also expensive. We've made it illegal to build the small 3-4 unit apartment buildings, the missing middle, that much of District 2 has, that are naturally affordable and fit and knit right in with the human scale community that we all enjoy and that we all like. So I think it's important we allow that type of new housing to be built. As far as traffic in our thoroughfares, well, most of our traffic, a lot of our traffic is people commuting because they can't live here. Traffic is caused by commuting from people living in one place and working from another. And so we have to co-locate jobs and housing together so that people don't have to drive to things, that they can walk and bike and live and work in one place.
And now, Terry.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. So we have to prioritize housing near transit, and housing along corridors should prioritize a modal shift. Earlier I mentioned removing parking minimums to make more space for affordable housing. I think that new construction on corridors should have not only shared electric vehicles, but also transit passes. We also have to make the streets safer for cyclists and pedestrians, and partner with our transit agencies in the area to prevent service cuts. A lot of people in D2 in West Berkeley are transit dependent essential workers, and many people rely on transit to get to medical appointments. So to really manage traffic on the thoroughfares, we have to deprioritize private vehicles and make transit, walking, and biking and other forms of micromobility more feasible, safe, and accessible.
Thank you. Let's see. So for the next question, we'll start with Terry. And that is, do you support rent control for single family houses? If so, why?
I do support rent control. A lot of people who I know in Berkeley who have lived here for a long time have only been able to do so because of rent control. That being said, rent control can't be our only tactic for affordable housing, but we should and we must prioritize the preservation of our current stock of rent controlled housing, much of which is single family homes.
Okay, thank you. So next, Alex.
So I think it's really important that we have limits on what rent increases can be. I was completely supportive of Governor Newsom when he signed legislation limiting rent increases to 5% plus inflation. I think that number actually could have been lower. Incomes aren't increasing 5% every year. Why should rent be increasing 5% every year? As far as rent control for single family homes, though, no, I'm not in favor. I think homes are a deeply personal thing. When you own your home, you want to be able to make use of it as you see fit. That means returning from sabbatical as you see fit, having family or friends move into it. You need to be using it for your purposes, and I think rent control often interferes with that on a personal single family home. So no, I am not supportive of having rent control on single family homes.
Okay, thank you. And Cheryl?
Actually, I am in support of rent control on single-family homes because corporations are purchasing all these homes all around the city, the country, and the world, and making them, they're owned by corporations. They're not by individuals. So they can do whatever they want, and they're forcing people to pay astronomical rents. And then, they're a corporation. So I feel if a corporation owns 20 zillion houses, there should be rent control on those units. But, I guess we would have to figure out whether it was a corporation or, a mom and pop that just has a single home that they're renting for a short period of time. That's different. But when you have corporations like changing the whole dynamic and forcing people out because they're not on the market for families to purchase anymore, then that's a problem for me. So no, I don't support corporations owning single-family homes without rent control. Thank you.
Okay, and Timothy?
So no, I don't support rent control on single-family homes. Like Alex said, owning a home is very personal, and you should be able to decide who you live with and what your home is used for. Whether or not you rent it out is your decision. How much you charge is your decision. It's funny because in Berkeley, evictions are at an all-time low. The need for this seems to be an overreach for a problem that doesn't exist. So I am 100% against trampling the property owner's right. So if you have someone who owns their home, I think they have the ultimate last say of who they live next to. So I'm absolutely no, I do not support rent control in single family homes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. For the next question, we shall start with Alex. And that is, have you been aware of the movement at Berkeley High naming predators? How will you support Berkeley students who have been calling for justice in response to widespread sexual harm?
I'm familiar with this from the advocacy of the young women at Berkeley High that are working on this issue. I've seen news reports of them. I've seen them speak at school board meetings, and I fully and completely support them. I think society needs to have conversations about toxic masculinity, about what we're teaching young men, about how we engage with each other on a really deeply fundamental personal level. And I think that Berkeley High and the city of Berkeley need to be part of supporting the people leading that conversation, making sure that youth feel safe in their halls of education, and that they are not being exploited and not being, they're not the victims of predation, and that they feel like they have a community that is supporting them during their education. So I'm fully supportive of the young activists that are fighting for this issue, and I wish them the best. I'll be there for them.
Okay, thank you. And Timothy?
Great. Can you repeat the question?
Have you been aware of the movement at Berkeley High naming predators? How will you support Berkeley students who have been calling for justice in response to widespread sexual harm?
Great, thank you. I have been aware of the situation at Berkeley High. Again, I'm involved with the school district. My daughter recently graduated this year, so I'm personally aware of the situation that's going on at Berkeley High. And I think my goal is always to get to the root issue of the problem. So there has to be an environment being created at the school that's given the male students this latitude to feel that they can threaten or put our female students in a situation where they feel threatened. Well, we need to address that. So I don't think the public forum is the right place for it, because these are still children and they're figuring it out. But I think we need to address the situation that created it in the first place. And remember that these are still children. They all need to be supported, especially the women.
Okay, thank you very much. And Terry.
Thank you. I am aware and I applaud the students for displaying leadership in this and for really spearheading this movement. Sexual harassment, sexual violence impacts students of all genders, people of all genders, rather. I look forward to partnering with the school district to hold those responsible accountable and to hold the leaders of the district accountable for responding to these instances of violence, and also making sure that survivors and their allies have access to mental health resources and health resources. I personally am fortunate to not be a survivor, but I've had friends who are survivors, and I know how much courage it takes to name abusers. And I totally support the students and applaud the leadership shown by our young leaders in Berkeley. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cheryl.
Yes, I remember BC before COVID. I was in my office in February looking out the window and seeing all these students out my window and hearing them for like a couple hours. So I finally went down there to check out what was going on. And I was shocked to find out that this exactly what they were talking about, sexual harassment in Berkeley High. All these students, they were actually from younger than high school as well, all hanging out, all sitting there talking, crying, telling their stories. I was the only council member that went down there to check out what was going on. And I was crying myself to hear the stories that they had to go through, to know that Berkeley High wasn't doing all that they could do to remedy this trauma was horrifying for me. They actually went to this superintendent, and I made sure that they had contact and were able to do that. And I followed up with the superintendent to talk to him about this issue. And I will continue to fight for the rights of young women in schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so for the next question, Cheryl, we shall start with you. Are there measures besides prohibiting natural gas in new construction that would be more effective in addressing climate change? The questioner feels that new residents and new businesses are being unfairly penalized.
Well, there's the electrification measure that came out of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Task Force that we did for new buildings. And also I put in an item to address, greenhouse gases by banning the sale of new cars, fossil fuel cars in Berkeley, which is at a policy committee currently. We have to do all that we can do to fight climate change. I have the Climate Emergency Mobilization Task Force just recently had a whole series. We have several series. One today was on electrification of new buildings, transportation, electrifying everything. And just the last one in August was on fossil fuel-free Bay Area. So we need to do all that we can do to make sure that legislation is forthcoming and bold to address climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. And Terry.
Yes, I think it would be far more effective, and I think that many people would agree with me, that investing in infill and compact growth to reduce vehicle miles traveled, locate housing near jobs, and curbing sprawl and super commutes would be more effective than waiting for hypothetical buildings to be built that might not get built, or waiting for Tesla to make affordable EVs. That being said, we really do have to fire on all cylinders, but there are things we can do more immediately that would have a very strong impact: infill growth, compact growth, non-automotive transport, electric transportation, transit, making sure people have safe routes to work so they don't have to drive, making sure that all of our mobility options are inclusive of folks of diverse abilities and age inclusive as well. I think these are more effective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Timothy.
Great. Can you repeat the question for me?
Are there measures besides prohibiting natural gas in new construction that would be more effective in addressing climate change? The questioner feels that new residents and new businesses are being unfairly penalized.
So there are ways you can address it, and new buildings with, and there's ways to address it and affect climate change. One is using the right building materials. So there's a ton of building materials out there that are eco-friendly, less expensive than traditional stick-built homes, that'll have a lower impact on our environment. One of them is called Gigacrete. I'm familiar with it, and it will help the building cost. It'll speed the building process, and the material used has an environmental benefit. So I believe the way we build the building will be a big help to impacting our environment. We need to build them. We need to look at how we build them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Alex.
So climate change is an existential issue. We've all been choking on ash recently because wildfire season is earlier and earlier every year. We're in danger of this becoming a normal. We need to have urgency with this issue, and that means real policy solutions, not just webinars, not just empty declarations of emergency. And so some of those policy solutions will be difficult over the next 10, 15 years. That will require change. Some of those will make our lives better regardless, like making it easier to walk, making it easier and safer to bike around our communities. That's something that we should be doing anyways. But we need to be looking at anything that puts carbon dioxide into our atmosphere as fossil fuel infrastructure, whether that's an oil derrick or a fracking well, or an internal combustion engine. Those are all putting carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. We should have urgency with phasing them all out for everyone over the next 10 to 15 years.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Timothy. How will you ensure that District 2 residents will be able to safely evacuate during natural disasters like wildfires or earthquakes?
So there is a measure on the ballot that will increase funding for fire protection for all of Berkeley residents. So this area is going to affect us all if we need to evacuate. And I think it needs a great deal of attention. And I plan to do that. I plan to give it a lot of attention when and if I'm elected. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cheryl.
Thank you. For one, we need more resiliency hubs, and we need to be, as I call it, unity through community. We need to know who our neighbors are and if they need help in an emergency situation in order to help them evacuate safely, or if they're in a wheelchair, or if they have oxygen, or whatever those things are. We need to know who's in our community. So, and we luckily, District 2 has numerous ways to exit quickly. And we need to make sure those paths are always clear and drivable, and safe for us to evacuate in the time of need. We have the jet fuel line that goes up, Alston Way under the high school and beyond. So we need to make sure that our community knows that this is going on, be prepared, have our stuff packed and ready to go, and our routes available. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex.
Yeah, so first of all, we need to support Measure FF. That's the measure that will give our firefighters more resources to be proactive to dealing with vegetation management to prevent fires that are a citywide issue, not just a Hills issue. They affect us all. And then my partner and I have been incredibly fortunate and enthusiastic participants in our community emergency response team. CERT teams are a incredibly important and vital first on the ground response to emergencies. It's how we really live this community through unity. It's how it actually happens in practice. And, we've been doing it as neighbors. We have our emergency supplies. We've identified our vulnerable neighbors. We have plans. And frankly, we haven't gotten support from the city or from current leadership. The leadership needs to be evangelizing these programs, bringing people into CERT so that people know that these organizations exist, know that this training exists, and really building this infrastructure on a neighborhood level.
Okay, thank you. And Terry.
Yeah, definitely support Measure FF, and CERT teams are vital. It's also really important that we increase the number of West Berkeley CERT teams, and we also need to increase the number of folks of color in CERT participation. Historically, District 2 has been underserved by our fire department because we are historically disinvested from community. So it'll be really important to work with our fire district coordinator to empower neighborhood leaders and folks throughout District 2's neighborhoods to take CERT classes and get certification. At last summer's block party, I live pretty close to Alex. The fire department told us it's great that we have these because in an emergency we might be on our own for a few days. And I think Berkeley Mutual Aid has done a lot of work during the pandemic, and that's something we can build on to increase our infrastructure and our resilience as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. And for this next question, we'll start with Terry. So, what is your position on defunding the Berkeley Police Department and specific plan for police reform? How would it specifically impact Berkeley residents and the law enforcement function? Would it be beneficial to citizens of Berkeley if there were more mental health services and funding for other community services and fewer police officers?
So I'm also a big proponent of Measure II. This will give our Police Review Commission expanded oversight capacity. I believe that police accountability and civilian oversight of the police department is a public safety issue. When we talk about defunding the police, I think it's really important to really give more nuance to the discourse because we have to really look at how much time the PD spends responding to, crisis calls that could be better served by mental health professionals. How much are we spending on military tactical training or equipment, and how much of those resources could be reinvested into things like gun violence intervention programs or restorative justice or mental health and other medical services. Because I think that these are the areas that should be reallocated for funding, but we have to be intentional and decisive so we don't cut dispatchers and anti-bias training.
Thank you. And Alex.
Yeah, so I think our public safety institutions are failing in two ways in West Berkeley right now. We have real racial inequities. It's in our data. It's in the lived experience of non-white people in our community. And then we also have real violent crime and gun violence. And so we need dual solutions. We need to be working on both these problems, not just one. And so I'm supportive of auditing our police department, as is currently going on right now, using that data to look at what do police spend their time doing. How much of their time are they spending investigating violent crime? How much are they spending it dealing with our unhoused? And do we really want armed officers or the police dealing with our unhoused? I think we don't. I think we probably need to be spending more money and more resources on mental health workers, on social workers, so that the police can be really focusing on violent crime, on investigative work, on being proactive on these issues, and not on issues that they maybe don't need to be involved with, including perhaps even traffic stops. Because I think the system we have now has led to bad outcomes, and we need to have the courage to think differently and reimagine it to solve both these problems.
Okay, thank you. And Cheryl.
Thank you. So my legislation for defunding 50% of the police was put into the mayor's omnibus item, 8 of the 10 points that I had in there, and modified, of course, but they were included. That's going to lead to a change in reforming our police department. I also have an item on the council for no confidence in the chief, because currently under his leadership, we have racial profiling. They're not preventing crimes and they're not solving crimes. Some crimes they solve, but not all. And I've also put in an item for a gun buyback program and talking to Ceasefire. And, you know, we have to put more money into not just mental health services, but substance abuse services for folks. We need to we already know that 30 to 40% of the budget goes towards those calls for mental health services. We can already take that out and put it into that money towards really solving the problems and preventing crime. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Timothy.
All right, thank you. So whenever I hear the word defunding the police, what I hear is we're taking our eye off what's the issue. The reason that defunding police is even in the conversation is because of the systemic racism that seems to grow in our police department. And we think the way to address that is by cutting the funding. Well, I'm not opposed to cutting the funding necessarily, but I need to get to the root cause of what drives the police officers to racial profile. Is it lack of training? Is it implicit bias? We need to get to the root cause of why so many Black and brown people lose their lives at the hands of police. One way we can do that is we need to ask ourselves, what do we want the police to do, and how do we want them to serve our community moving forward in the 21st century? Because showing up to a homeless encampment with guns, that's not what we need. We need safety in our streets. We need them investigating violent crimes. We need them to keep our families safe.
Thank you. Okay, for the next question, we shall start with Alex. What can be done to repair damaged sidewalks and potholes in District 2? What costs are borne by the city and which by the property owner?
So this is an important question because right now, District 2 has the worst roads of any council district in the entire city. It's an objective fact. The Public Works Department ranks all the roads, and District 2s are the worst of any district in the entire city. And that's a failure of leadership. That's a failure of advocating for us getting our fair amount of investment in our infrastructure. And it's the same with Aquatic Park. It's the same with a lot of our infrastructure. And I know we have T1, who the voters approved and staff has been working on, and that's helping some with investment in West Berkeley. But fundamentally, there's no long-term plan right now. There's no long-term plan to repave most of the roads in West Berkeley. And that's a complete failure, because that means that the bad roads we have and the bad sidewalks we have, there's no plan to fix them. And that's a failure of our current leadership. And we need to address that. And I'll bring those resources and fight for those resources for our community.
Next, we'll hear from Cheryl.
So actually, I've been advocating for streets and sidewalk repairs in District 2. And if you notice, District 2 sidewalks are getting repaired. And 6th Street got paved. Remember this happening all the time when you were driving down 6th Street? No longer. I've been advocating for District 2. If you realize, if you've been following the politics in District 2, the previous incumbent before Cheryl did not put any money or investment in District 2. It's gotten served now and there's, I'm advocating for some streets that have never gotten paid, Curtis for one. Like every time, every chance I get, I talk about the streets in District 2 that need attention. And there's quite a few, but that's through no fault of mine. This happened before I got into office, and I've been advocating since then. As you notice, District 2 has gotten a lot more attention in the last 3.5 years than it has in 12 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Timothy.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think anyone needs a report. If you live in District 2, you know we have the worst roads in the city. And that's really due to the leadership, whether it's current or past, it's still due to our leadership that we've had as a council, not advocating for our district. So when you live and work in a district like I do, you're vested. You drive those roads, your kids ride their bikes on those roads. We need to advocate for every dollar that our district deserves, and that's what I do. I advocate for every district, every dollar that we deserve for our roads in this district. Now, the second part of your question, I believe you asked was, what part of repair do you think the homeowner should bear? And I think the homeowner's portion should be mitigated. We all pay taxes to make sure our streets and sidewalks are taken care of. So I have a client who was just complaining about how much they had to pay. It was ridiculous.
Okay. All right. And Terry.
So I was appointed to the Transportation Commission for 3 reasons: to work on San Pablo modal shift, to work on the 5-year paving plan, and to work on Vision Zero. If I could, I would be running exclusively on streets. That being said, it is a matter of geographic and environmental justice that we prioritize District 2 for street repairs, sidewalk repairs, and capital improvements. And I think that given the historic neglect, the city should take the full weight of repairing the sidewalks. We ask a lot of our flatland homeowners, and I think that this is something the city can take one for the team on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. For our next question, we'll start with Cheryl. What can you do to address issues that Black, Indigenous, and people of color are facing and make sure they are being represented in city policies?
Thank you for the question. Currently, I have an item in a policy committee that I put forth to declare racism as a public health crisis, a threat, and safety issue. We are not dealing, COVID-19 has brought to the forefront the racism, systemic, institutional, environmental racism that we've all been dealing with all my life as a Black woman, no different being on city council, no different being on this panel sometimes with some of the opponents. However, we have to address racism and deal with the inequities that people of color face on the daily. People don't understand how implicit bias, the little microaggressions, and all these different things affect people, the trauma it puts on us, and all the things that, in ways it affects people of color that have to deal with that on the daily. So that's one way. We have to be, I feel like if we unify ourselves, if we talk about the subject, we can become one city, one team for real, and be able to be there ready and willing to step up and help each other when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you. And Timothy.
right, would you mind repeating the question for me one more time?
Sure, no problem. What can you do to address issues that Black, Indigenous, and people of color are facing and make sure they are being represented in city policies?
So one of the things I do is make sure that we truly have a diverse workforce. So one of the things that come across and you notice is that when you don't have a person of color in the room, then you get policies and procedures that marginalize them. So one thing I do is make sure we advocate that we have people of color, women, in the room at every stage and every level of our city government, because that's my responsibility. And I think once you do that, once you have voices in the room, you will see a noticeable difference. Can we address every area of racism as a city? No, I don't think that's really possible. But what we can do is address the inequities that stem from our policies, and we can do that by making sure we have people of color who are responsible in the room.
Okay, thank you. Terry.
Certainly prioritizing people of color and women for appointments to City of Berkeley commissions. District 2 has a number of vacancies that could be filled by members of the community. There are no people of color on the Planning Commission, and it's really important that our boards and commissions reflect the diversity of our city. We also have to address the historic racism in Berkeley's housing policies. We have to confront redlining and the impacts of exclusionary zoning. Working on Vision Zero, the majority of Berkeley's high injury street network is in Black and brown neighborhoods, and people of color are disproportionately impacted by auto collisions. So we have to look at all the areas in which the city plays out systemic racism. Like Timothy says, there's no shortage to our options here. In the arts world, orgs that are mostly POC have capital needs that don't get met.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And Alex.
Yeah, so I'm fully committed to appointing commissioners to literally have a voice in shaping city policy that reflects the diversity of our district. That's incredibly important, that we're lifting up those voices as leaders. And which is one of the reasons I've been incredibly disappointed with the incumbent, who has left the Police Review Commission unfilled for 10 months. So this is a body that is directly dealing with these issues in policing, and our community does not have a voice on that commission because it's been unfilled for 10 months. So we don't have a voice there. I would fill that vacancy to reflect the diversity of this community. Likewise, on the 3 housing commissions, zoning, planning, housing advisory, the incumbent did not appoint anyone her entire tenure that was a person of color or a woman. And so I think we need to do better on diversity, and we need to lift up people's voices, diverse voices, so that they can have a direct voice on policy.
Okay, thank you. For the next question, we will go to and start with Timothy. What action will you take to keep all safe from COVID-19, particularly vulnerable and at-risk populations?
So the vulnerable and at-risk populations are of a high concern to me, because not only are their health in question, but if they get ill, then that poses the rest of the city, that puts the rest of the city at risk. So we need to address that by making sure they have access to hand washing stations, to make sure they have access to masks when they need it, and to encourage them to do so. So there has to be, in the service-resistant population that needs our help to help reduce the COVID, we need to have an incentive for them to do this. So that we would have to build an incentive for them to wear their mask, to to do what it takes to help reduce this virus and this threat to the rest of the city. So the first thing I do is make sure they have access. The second thing I do is make sure they have a program that would encourage them to continue.
Okay, thank you. Next, let's hear from Terry.
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm having a lot of technical difficulties. I promise I'm going to handle this. So I take care of my mom. She's a senior in the 90s. So certain compromise for seniors, I have a really high concern for. It's really important that we don't have seniors who are.
Terry, you're still breaking up quite a bit now. Sorry.
Okay, well, is this any better? Okay, so we have to make sure that none of our seniors are food insecure or isolated. We have to support the work of folks like Berkeley Network, those kinds of release folks, make sure that our seniors have access to food and anything they need. We have to prioritize getting those folks in hotels so that they can shelter in place safely. We have to make sure that the public is well informed, educated, and held accountable for health responsible behaviors when they're out and about. We have to make sure that there are strong workplace protections and that workers and employers have all the PPE they need. Especially for our food workers and our transit workers. And we have to be really careful as we reopen schools.
Okay, thank you. And now, Alex.
Yeah, so we need to be leading with public health evidence, with the best public health evidence and data and advice that we can get. And that means encouraging people and really pushing mask wearing, allowing social distancing, allowing businesses to operate outside and giving them that space as much as is possible. The goals here should be protecting our vulnerable, protecting our essential workers, making sure that they don't get sick and they can continue functioning, and getting to a point where we can reopen our schools. Those are the policy goals we have to be moving towards, because right now those communities are suffering the most. The people that are vulnerable in our community, the people that are essential workers and have to be interacting with people on a daily basis, and then children that aren't in school. We need to be getting them back in school. And this is one of the reasons I was incredibly disappointed with the incumbent when she was the only council member that did not vote to support a citywide mask mandate. This wouldn't have been criminalizing anything. It would have been a civic code. And I was very disappointed that she didn't take the opportunity to really push mask wearing and keep people safe in our community.
Okay, thank you. And Cheryl.
The person that just spoke actually lied. I do support mask wearing, wear a mask all the time, and have advocated for everyone to wear a mask. And so I don't understand why he feels the need to lie in a public forum. But COVID-19 is a big issue, and we really need to address it with equity and make sure that health is a top priority for all people with no exceptions, provide economic relief directly to the people, rescue workers and communities and not corporate executives, make a down payment on the regenerative economy while preventing future crises, protect our democratic process while protecting each other. COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the light the systemic, institutional, structural, environmental disparities and disproportionately impact African Americans, Latinx, Native Americans, and all the people of color for decades. Our country and others around the world have built on an economy to ensure a just transition and an economic stability and success. You know, we have to wear masks and physically distance. Thank you.
Okay. Now, The next question will start with Terry. What is your position on Prop 15, which will increase taxes on commercial properties, and why?
I'm a huge supporter of Prop 15. I think it's very important that large corporations pay their fair share, especially now when the city of Berkeley, Unified School District, BART and AC Transit, all of our close allies are going to be struggling fiscally. I think now more than ever, it's important that we hold large corporations accountable for paying their share.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Next, Alex.
Yeah, so I'm a complete supporter of Prop 15, and we need to be having big business pay their fair share. Just in Berkeley, we'll get $6 million into BUSD from Prop 15 every year. So it's a huge deal. It'll have incredibly meaningful change. We want Disney, we want Chevron, we want even Bayer here in Berkeley to be paying their fair share for taxes. Touching base on the last issue with mask wearing for a moment, the incumbent voted how she voted. There's a public record. You should all go look. It's not about personal action. It's about the policy that you support, and that's how leadership works. You can't say one thing and do another. You have to walk the walk. Talking the talk is not enough.
Thank you. And Cheryl.
Yes, I support 15. Corporations have to pay their fair share. That's one way of doing it. I just have to state that, here we are in a COVID-19 pandemic. Regardless of what people say about me, please investigate and look into the truth. There are so many lies being told, so that people really need to pay attention to what's going on here. There's a deliberate attempt to make it look like this council member hasn't done a lot. I've done so much, I can prove it. Look it up, check it out. Mask wearing is something that I have supported, and I don't know what this person is talking about, but that's fine. He can tell his lies because I speak the truth. I've been an advocate for mask wearing this whole time. So look into it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now, Timothy.
Thank you. Yeah, I am a supporter of Prop 15. I believe that corporations need to pay their fair share, and the communities need it. So we need this tax money, and the regular people, the working class folks that punch in and punch out every day, we pay our fair share. We pay our taxes, and if we don't, there's consequences. I don't think the corporations should get off without paying their fair share. So yes, I do support Prop 15. I think the money's going to be used in a much better way in the hands of our local community councils and cities than it is inside the corporate coffers. So yes, I do support Prop 15.
All right, thank you. Now, this is going to be our final question before we go to the final statements. And we shall start with Timothy. How much are you spending on your campaign? And who are your largest donors?
Okay. My largest donor is probably my wife, which is $50. Is the most anyone can contribute to my campaign, or my daughter. She contributed $50 as well. So I'm involved in public financing. And currently how much have I spent so far on my campaign? I've spent maybe $6,000 so far on my campaign. This is really a grassroots movement. I have a pretty large client base that I contact on a regular basis, let them know that I am involved in the political process, and I have a lot of support. Like I said, I've been in business here in District 2 for over 20 years. I know a few people. So that's been my outreach and that's been my contact. So that's it.
Thank you. And now Cheryl.
Yeah, so far, you know, I'm in the public financing, so my highest contributor is $50, and most of my contributions are $50. And I've raised close to $40,000 almost. We have a couple of, we have a match coming in soon to bring us up to that. And, you know, it's just amazing the level of contributions that I've been receiving without even trying to, I haven't even done a real push, but every day, thankfully, we get $100 to $200+ and it's been, I'm just honored and humbled by all the people that are contributing. And the list is long, and the titles that they hold, because you have to ask your the employer and their occupation. It's pretty impressive. So we just filed our 460 yesterday. Check it out. It's really great. Thank you. Have a blessed.
Okay.
That's
Thank you.
day, almost.
Thank you. And Alex.
Yeah, so I'm using public financing, so I'm not taking any money from corporations, from PACs, from dark money, from special interests. It's all from individuals. The biggest donation I've accepted is $50, and so by far, something like 80% of my money comes from the city of Berkeley, from the taxpayers of the people of Berkeley. And that's, you know, really important to me that's how my campaign is being funded. You know, I want to go back to this mask issue for a second because it's really important. So on September 15th, Council Item 12, Civil Enforcement of Face Coverings. Council voted to have a civil enforcement of face coverings, an incredibly important public health action. And the incumbent was the only council member that did not support this. That has real implications for our vulnerable populations, for our essential workers. And, you know, you can't just pretend that didn't happen and say one thing and do another.
Okay, next we'll hear from Terry.
I'm also using public finance, largest contribution being $50. Mostly from folks in the 94710, 94702 zip codes. We've raised about $45K so far.
Okay, that's your statement. Okay. All right. Well, before the candidates give their closing statements, I have a few remarks on behalf of the LWV-BAE. Thank you to the candidates for running for office and for your participation this evening. I also want to thank the audience for engaging in our democracy. For further information about upcoming forums, the candidates, pros and cons, and positions on ballot measures, please visit the League's website, lwvbae.org, or votersedge.org/ca. We invite you to join the League to help us engage voters and defend democracy. We do so much more than voter registration and education. Visit our website and social media accounts at LWV-BAE. The deadline to register to vote is October 19th this year. You can register to vote online at the Secretary of State's website, sos.ca.gov. Remember to vote by mail or at the polls by Tuesday, November 3rd. This year, we are encouraging voters to vote as early as possible. Please see our website for more information about voting in this election. Now, the candidates will make closing statements. We will reverse the order that we began with, and each candidate will give a closing statement of 1 minute. And we shall begin with Cheryl.
Thank you. I am the incumbent. I've been happy and humbled to lead District 2 for the last 3.5+ years. And, you know, you can make your own decision. I hope that you'll choose me only and none of the opposition that's on this forum, because you can see what I've done. Welcome to the City of Berkeley, Ohlone Territory. Declared the climate emergency, fossil-free city. And there's tons. I've passed 300 pieces of legislation. I've been a positive and effective voice for the district. District 2 is getting the attention that it needs, and it has been neglected prior to my leadership. And I'm doing the best job that I can possibly do. I put in more than 2,080 hours a year working on this. And I'm happy and humble. I read all the packets, and I have 100% attendance at all the meetings. So vote for Cheryl only. I'm the best representative for District 2. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Alex.
Thank you. So my name is Alex Sharenko, and I've been endorsed by City Council members Lori Drosty, Rashi Kesarwani, and Susan Wingraf, Assembly Member Buffy Wicks, former Council Member Daryl Moore, the Berkeley firefighters, and over 50 District 2 residents, because they know that I have the combination of passion, experience, ability, and values to deliver meaningful change on the issues that District 2 is dealing with: homelessness, public safety, and a lack of investment. I'm running because we're failing on these issues, and everyone in our community deserves better. I've served on city commissions where I've written policy and learned how the city works. I've been a volunteer helping underserved members of our community. As a scientist, I've used critical thinking skills to design and build next generation solar energy technologies. And as a neighbor, I've helped organize and strengthen community emergency preparedness because I know how important it is that we take care of each other. I'm committed not just to our progressive values, which are incredibly important, but to making real progress on these issues, because that's what our community deserves.
Okay, thank you. And Terry.
Sure. There is a long legacy and high standard for Black leadership in Berkeley and a precedent for queer Black leadership. Not only is it important to elect leaders who represent the diversity of the district, but those who can model intergenerational, intersectional, and cross-cultural leadership. We need leaders capable of maintaining productive relationships to serve marginalized communities and deliver results in housing affordability, climate resilience, community safety, and achieve a just recovery from COVID-19. My husband and I losing our apartment made me a housing activist. Seeing my mother, for whom I care, lose her mobility and independence to MS and diabetes has made me a mobility activist. I am running out of devotion to the community that raised me and a desire to keep my hometown a place where people from all backgrounds can find homes, raise families, and care for their elders. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Timothy.
All right, thank you. I want to take the time to touch on my items that I want the community to know what's important to me, which is the housing, homelessness, and policing of our community. So one of the things that got me moving for this election is the fact that we don't see enough change, enough tangible change in our district. So if you're like me and you don't see enough tangible change in our district, then we need a change in leadership. So there's a lot of things that are said and a lot of things that are done. What do you see when you leave your home? What do you see when you drive your car? What do you see when you go to the park? Is that what you want for the future? Well, I want something different. And if you agree with me, then I suggest you vote for Timothy Carter. Thank you.
Thank you. So we can't show you our appreciation with a round of applause because of this situation with Zoom, but let me thank all of our candidates for being here tonight, and also Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for attending, and good night.